so in honor of your commitment and partnership. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you and to see the changes you're making within the snowsports industry. I, for one, wish I was skiing right now, but happy to be here as well. Thank you all for joining us. We wish we could see your faces. That's not the way this is going to roll today. Today, we're going to be in an environment where we're going to actually just be sharing with you some of the insights and knowledge we have about what it means to create an inclusive workplace, and particularly what it means to do so in the midst of COVID. We're going to share a little bit about our company, who we are. We're going to talk about why this is a unique moment in time and why this matters in a way that it frankly hasn't mattered before, and why it's going to give you tools as leaders to actually know what you can do. We're going to give you what we call some moments of truth, just a sampling of some moments of truth about how you can make change and just be conscious about what needs to happen. So let's talk a little about our company. So PrismWork is launched. Corey, would you mind shifting pages? Corey and I are teaming up on shifting. So if we're a little slow on this, guys, bear with us. PrismWork is a culture transformation company. We work with leaders and across a variety of industries and a variety of different kinds of companies to help them really figure out how they can actually evolve to create the best-in-class company and best-in-class culture for today's really unique environment and changing environment. What we do, well, let's talk, Corey, one more slide. Everything we do and everything we focus on as we create culture transformation is around data. We gather data, we provide data, and then we use that data actually to help you as leaders in your companies, as leaders across industries, to figure out how you can shift and how you can evolve. Really, our goal is to make sure your internal culture is aligning with your external brand, and that those experiences for all stakeholders, be it your customer, be it your employees, be it your investors, whatever it might look like, are really aligned. The question is, how do we do that? Lofty goals, right? We have developed what we call the Hardy model of measurement. It's the Hardy model of leadership and culture. It's built around and vetted through leaders across a variety of industries on a global level to really understand what do we need to do as leaders today. And Hardy stands for, as you can see in our little emblem there, humility, empathy, accountability, resiliency, transparency, inclusivity. Those core behaviors are essential, as we've learned based on our research, as we've learned on a whole spectrum of assessments and analysis that we've done, are the core traits that leaders need today. And so when you implement these, you create truly inclusive cultures, but more importantly, you create cultures that are both inclusive, but also profitable and have huge impact. How we do it, how we bring it home, we have a variety of solutions, such as webinars like this. This is what we call a leadership lab, where we're creating a solution in a webinar. We actually do workplace assessments. We do leadership training. We do brand work. Essentially, our goal is to help set you up on your continuum to 21st century readiness and to be the best in class company of today. Who are we? Well, we are a collection of experts across a myriad of fields. We have leadership experts, we have branding experts, we have culture transformation experts, we have DE&I experts. We have an accordion model of management that allows us to bring in exactly who we need to bring in to meet the needs of our clients. So who's with us today? Who are our experts today? I'm so excited to introduce my business partner and collaborators, Corey Jones and Noni Onward. Noni, maybe you want to briefly introduce yourself? Can we hear you, Noni?
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can. Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay.
Go for it.
After a long career as an engineer, I decided to enter this world of diversity, inclusion, and belonging, trying to shape new experiences for people like myself entering a world where I was the only one. And that's the passion that has driven me. I lead research. I have we do a lot of culture transformation work, and I'm also a huge advocate of talent, especially emerging strands of talent, so that they can be seen and valued in the world.
And Corey?
Yes, I'm excited to join all of you, be here with you. I bring over 25 years of experience of creative experience, from making videos, films, short films, commercials, to digital, from apps, public relations, advertising, broadcast television, and more, as well as being a diverse creative in that industry, and understanding what leadership means, and seeing leadership from the lens of being in the crew, to telling the stories, to also creating strategies with marketing leaders and with business leaders of how to make their message resonate. So I'm happy to bring this to the conversation and talk more about what's going on today.
Can you tell us why this moment is different? Maybe share a little bit of insight.
Yes, this, this is an extraordinary moment, right? There are so many reasons to say that, from a pandemic, COVID, which is why we're here to talk about, but it's also converging at a time where there's social upheaval and marches for justice for things like Black Lives Matter. There's the Me Too movement. There's gender pay equity. There's LGBTQ rights that are all moments of interest, moments of crises that are all coming up at this moment. At the same time, we have to figure out how to be more patient, how to be distant and make connections in different ways remotely, how to prepare as retailers for our store for new employees as we scale for COVID. How do you as a brand speak up? As we know, brands are either celebrated, and they also attract potential candidates by the way they stand on social justice issues. And that also means that diversity practices and hiring practices are expected even more so today. But at the same time, the workforce is changing as well. There's higher unemployment in other industries, so people are seeking work. There's also a rise in needs for mental health. So how do you support that? Do you provide meditation or yoga? How do you take advantage of this moment to be empathetic, to use those core principles of Hardy during this time? Keep going past that slide. So let's talk about the industry, right? What's happening in the industry. And we know that production and distribution for outdoor retail is hit hard from supply chain. But there's some other things that we can talk about as far as trends. This is a report from the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, where they were doing monthly tracking and check-ins on the industry. And this is what they're finding, is that among trade association revenues and business revenues, this trend has started where there's positive growth, and they're starting to see year-over-year gains. Also in business employment, 36%. Now that's a small number, but again, a rising trend of businesses in the outdoor retail industry are reporting that they're hiring, and more employees are needed.
And Corey, you were saying that you were seeing, just anecdotally, there's just more opportunity, more people are showing up and they're out in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, in the outdoor industry, there's a lot more diverse enthusiasts. If you look at what the Outdoor Industry Association reported, they were already tracking trends from 2016 on to now, and it was showing a rise in diverse enthusiasts in biking, camping, or car camping, kayaking, skateboarding was on the rise. And even from there, since March of this year, continuing to track that data month over month, they're seeing an increase in diverse candidates in urban dwellers in hiking, camping, fishing. So there's a lot more people, a lot more diverse enthusiasts that are joining the ranks of outdoor recreation. So there's a great opportunity, not just for new business, but the real true COVID opportunity is that in conjunction with the new business and new diverse people getting outdoors, and just people in general getting outdoors, while inclusive practices are just no longer optional, here is the opportunity for the outdoor industry to meet the demands of the new enthusiasts by incorporating, hiring, and retaining more diverse people in their workforce.
So
So with that, that's what we're going to talk about some today, but this is just a teaser of the playbook, the Hardy playbook that's being developed in conjunction with the Snowsports Industry of America. We partnered with them to talk through a few, as Leeson said, a few workplace moments. We'll dive deep into diversity and the growth and the impact on the industry for the snowsports industry, as well as how to infuse Hardy humility, empathy, accountability, resiliency, transparency, and inclusivity in your hiring practices and your meeting interactions. And that's what we're going to cover.
So the reason why we're doing a playbook is when we talk about a lot of these notions, they're very theoretical. And a lot of wonderful people that want to make this happen, they're going like, yeah, but what do I exactly try to do? And so the idea of the playbook is simply creating pragmatic, practical resources and tools and actions and metrics and different things that can help you get there, but make it in a very attainable way, not lose you in the universe of theoretical culture transformation. We chose 3 moments because they're very important. And interestingly enough, these are moments that are really essential right now in the times of COVID. Because if you envision how your life is playing out right now, in many organizations, hiring is taking place and people are joining without ever meeting in person. That would have been unlikely to happen. They're being onboarded via Zoom. They're being told what to do. And no longer you have the opportunity to pair people, and in many settings, of course, in retail, that's a very different challenge, especially if you're able to physically open. But a lot of these dynamics are changing, and how people come together, share ideas, dissent, or support each other has completely shifted by COVID. And so the interesting thing about it, though, is inclusion is a power that drives, that helps overcome a lot of these challenges, regardless of the time. It just so happens that right now during COVID, those principles are even more essential for everyone. Is not necessarily only the newcomer or the new person or the different person. Everybody wants to feel that they belong right now, and that is a struggle because we were relying on cultural norms and things that we could do before that we don't no longer have. So with that, yes.
Noni, I wanted
yes.
to just weigh in here and say, when we talk about inclusion, we want to be clear. We're not just talking about diversity in terms of, race or creed for that matter. It's in belonging at so many levels. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about what that looks like when we're talking about that, because I think oftentimes we revert to, we're talking about hiring more Black people, rather than really understanding that nuance there. Perhaps you could share a little bit about that first before we dive in.
Of course, and also it's important that we all reach a common understanding of what belonging means, because everybody has a different version. Fundamentally, belong means 4 things. When I feel like I belong, I feel seen, I feel connected, I feel supported, and I feel proud of being part of the organization. Mm-hmm. Seen because I can show up as myself and you can see me who I am, you can see my strengths, you can see my weaknesses. Connected is because I can relate to other people next to me. I can go to them. I can relate to their stories and they can relate to mine. Supported is because when I make a mistake, when I fail at work, when something doesn't go right, they got my back. I will know how to get it done. I will know how to learn. And proud is because it's only when I see my contributions reflected in the final outcome, is when I hear my ideas, when I see my ideas being implemented, is that I feel that success is partly mine, and I take pride in that. And that gives me the incentive to do it again. Now you tell me which person in this planet wouldn't want that feeling when they're at work. And that's what we're talking about. And it's interesting because what we find in the research is that this experience can be disrupted not necessarily because, of course it is if you're the only Hispanic or you're the only African-American or whatever, but it also can be brought on by being the only parent, for example, surrounded by everybody's a parent except me. I've had the experience to do both, and it both feel mutually, they're both equally exclusive. Yes, Lisa.
Well, I was going to say, and that particularly right now in the midst of COVID, of course, is a driving concern,
Yeah.
right? Are you a parent? Are you not? Do you have caretaking responsibilities? And belonging around that is huge. The other thing I was going to mention is that we just finished a Hardy workplace assessment, and it was interesting. The driving constraint for that company was that if you weren't in sales, you didn't feel like you belonged. And so when we talk about these conversations around inclusion, we're inviting all of those who are joining us today to be thinking beyond kind of that very, very simplistic version, which we've been trained to think about, and to expand it to the notion of belonging as Noni has outlined. What does belonging feel like, and how do I create an inclusive and belonging culture?
Yeah, so we chose 3 moments, and so we're going to dig into the hiring moment. So Corey, if you can advance there. So how does Hardy show up? So yes, thank you. So hiring is an interesting one because it starts way back before you actually interview a person. It starts with the moment that your brand is recognized, that you put your brand out there. Whether you have a website or you have a booth at a conference, or whether you go to colleges to recruit people, people will have an image of what your company is, and they will decide based on how you show up whether you're an interesting company to work for. And there might be different drivers. Some people love the stuff you sell. Perhaps some people love the location that you're at. Maybe some people fall in love with the job that you're offering. And maybe some people have a friend that works in your organization and they know the reputation. So this is why it matters. So let's talk about the Hardy attributes and how they play out. The first one is humility. I don't know if any of you have ever taken the implicit association test. It's called the IAT, or also a way to determine your unconscious biases. I don't know if anybody in the audience has taken that test, but if you have, I gotta tell you, it brings you down. Because you think you are so Mr. Special with no biases. And when I took it, I just thought I was going to cry, because it really reveals the unconsciousness and the pervasiveness of these beliefs that I didn't even know I had, but they've been shaped by TV, by conversations, by where I live, by the news channels that I watch. They're all shaping. And so in order for you to come in and try to disrupt your own biases, be humble and say, you know what, I don't know and I need to learn. And yes, I am biased, but it's part of being a human. But you have to start there, because if you're not able to understand your biases, you're going to be walking with these lenses in front of your eyes that will not allow you to see the world as is.
Right. And
empathy has a very
sorry. I was going to say, we've also talked about how in humility, curiosity, that arc of curiosity is so essential, that growth mindset, that openness to where am I now and how can I evolve? So thank you for mentioning that, the implicit bias and how we can change.
Yeah, and it might be that these biases are not necessarily showing up in you personally, but maybe there's a bias on your website. Yeah. Maybe you have a bias where you're only showing young people on your website, and me as in the higher level of the young people age group, I would be discouraged because I would not see that. So just know that we fall into these things, and this is the issue of biases, right? Empathy. So how do you handle declines when a person doesn't get the job? How do you handle that? And are you as careful as you are with your hires as you are with your declines? And the reason why this matters is because there's a reputation. First of all, is a humanness of the employee. It builds empathy and builds connection with the person. You might be even give them ideas on how to get a better job, actually, or make a connection so that they can come back. And also when they leave this process, they're going to tell good things about your company. Your brand is enhanced.
Exactly.
That's a great point, really, because word of mouth continues not just from your customers, but also the candidates, the potential candidates you have, not just also during the process, right? So it's not just the decline, it's as people sign on, as you're bringing them on, meeting with other team members, how responsive are you? How open are you are you you leaving yourself for questions during the hiring process, because all of that will be remembered by that candidate and talked about with the people that, as they're considering these opportunities, they'll say, well, this is how they shared with me. This is how they showed up. And that is your brand in action, how you show up during the hiring process. So when you can incorporate that empathy, that is something that can help your brand go a long way, and being transparent as well. As long, when you start thinking about, this is a passion, this is something we've all, companies have made, these great proclamations last year in 2020, post Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. This is a great opportunity to continue to remind not just yourself, but your team, hey, this is something that we want to do. We want to be more diverse. We want to welcome more Black people. We want to welcome more gay and transgender people to our team and give them opportunities to lead. So that's why we're hiring. That's why we're talking to more people. That's why we're not stopping at, the first one that comes through the door. This is why we're pushing to change the dynamic of how we bring people onto our team.
Accountability. How does accountability show? By the way, there's many more in the playbook. This is just a sample that we picked for this, but we have, and then what we do have in the playbook is what specific actions do you take to achieve this? Accountability is, if you think about hiring, it's a funnel. You start with a lot of people and we end up with one. So what you want to do is always measure and track to see where you are, where are these unconscious drops of perhaps a category of talent is falling off. Let's say you have women at the beginning, you had a lot of women at the beginning, but somewhere in the process, either the recruiter didn't think of them, or maybe the interviews, but you want to know that so you can track your metrics. You can know where these drop-off points are. You need some resiliency, because you will, like everybody else that is trying new things, will make mistakes. And you cannot possibly give up just because one was difficult and complicated. You take the opportunity to learn. I have worked with.
Go ahead, Noni. I'm sorry. I was going to say it's really important.
No, I was just going to say that I've worked with clients that have told me that, oh, we hired our first, veteran, and it didn't work out, so we never did it again. That's insane, because you are hiring people of the same kind every day, and when they don't work out, you get another one. And that's exactly what you need to do. You learn and you just do it again. Yes, Lisa, what were you going to say?
To say exactly what you're saying. It's this self-reinforcing issue, right? When we look at Hardy, are you resilient enough to be humble enough to ask the question and be curious enough to say, why didn't it work now that way? Let's do it again and do it differently and make sure it can work the next time. Yeah. So it's that self-reinforcing process.
Absolutely. And of course, transparency, right? You need to be intentional and let your team know, because otherwise they're going to go like, why is the hiring process taking so long? Why am I not in the interview panel? Why am I in the interview panel? Why are we sourcing there? What you need to be, you come clean and you let them know what your intentions are, so you can rally them, and sending your commitment, talking about your commitment to diversity and inclusion will create a change, a management. That's where the change happens, is when people start seeing a new outcome. And then finally, inclusivity, because you need to ensure that the process includes people like the one you're interviewing. So your panel, carefully, so if you have any, or even be clear when you're talking about transparency, let the candidate know, hey, listen, we don't have people over 50 in our team, but we really want one, because that's a great market that we want to tackle. And we need you. We need your expertise. You need your point of view. That I can deal with. But if I just walk in, nobody tells me, and I look around and all I see is much younger people, I will not feel I'm the right person. And I will not feel I am the right person for the wrong reasons. So let this be inclusion, making sure that you are able to create an environment also that the candidate feels seen.
So this is a really great wrap up of how you would apply Hardy, and how would you apply kind of this new methodology of thinking around this moment of truth, the hiring moment of truth. Can we move on to looking at onboarding? I've been hired, Noni, the 50-year-old, has been hired. She's ready to start. what are ways that we can create an environment where success is set up? Because we know those first few months are those make it and break it months for new employees, right? There's those first few months are what define success over time. And it's where trust is built. So let's go to onboarding and to see how we can apply Hardy to onboarding.
So this is a very interesting thing, not unlike the time when you showed up in middle school and your parents had just relocated. It's November, you start middle school in November, it's the 6th grade, and you show up the first day of school. And the principal is really nice, so you do your classroom, and the teacher is kind, and there comes the lunch hour. And know that by the time you get to onboarding, the hiring process during COVID did not allow the employee in many cases these days to actually even see what their offices look like. They were not able to experience the ability to just casually walk into somebody's desk and strike conversation. Those avenues are generally not possible right now in many places in the country. You are interviewing on Zoom, you are being onboarded on Zoom, and you're going to be doing your work on Zoom. So know that this makes it even more stressful for both the manager and the employee to figure out how they're going to interrelate. Humility will start by people asking about the employee. If you are a person of much younger age and I am your hire, but maybe you won't ask me about your age, but about my age, but although, you know, I'll tell you my age before I tell you my weight, but that's a separate topic. But you want to know, if you've never hired a person like me, you don't assume. I'm Latina, I'm a woman, and I'm over 50. So you can go by all the stereotypes that television, media, society, where you grew up, your friend told you, or you can ask me. You can ask me what my culture tells me, how my experience as an immigrant has been, and that'll be more empowering for me. Also, we start building trust, which is how successful relationships work between manager and employee. You bring empathy.
There's a special dance there, right? Because we want to make sure that we're not invading someone's private space, and we're not doing the work that we need to do by understanding other people's cultures. Corey, do you have any suggestions about how we can ask that question that's curious without going over to the tone deaf place? Where's the nuance there? Any thoughts?
Well, a lot of great ways to do that is to be transparent, right? Is to help them understand, like, this is new for us. You know, you are our first. And we may have questions, but we want you to not just feel comfortable. We want you to help to change our culture. That's why we're asking for different people, different mindsets, different backgrounds to join our team, because we know we can be a better company, you know, and tell them transparently that you are the first. But we're looking for more. You're not the last. And we want to make sure that we build that trust. And, you know, some of these things that I see on the slide, like be honest about growth opportunities, salary, performance criteria. Think of all the other areas that so maybe some marginalized groups are not seeing accountability or transparency in housing, or when they go try to, you know, be a customer somewhere. Certainly at their job, certainly at their place of employment, it would be great as a refuge that they can trust that someone that they're partnering with is accountable to what the salary is, what do increases look like, what is the performance criteria, what are we, you know, how are we judging your performance in this first 30, 60, 90 days, and having that clarity around that, so that new people from all backgrounds and all of these new enthusiasts that are joining the ranks of outdoor recreation can feel comfortable and feel like there's a place for them to belong. Mm.
You were talking about empathy, Noni.
Yeah, so, you know, the thing is also that you need to create an ecosystem for an employee, right? And it might be just like you needed somebody to show you in middle school. Back to my you can tell I had a traumatic experience in around middle school years. I'm having group therapy here. You need an ecosystem, need somebody, perhaps it's who can teach you how to get the tools that you need, who's really good at the job that you're trying to do, who knows the project longer, who's the one who can coach you on this technique, or everything. Just make sure that this person is surrounded by a group of people that are committed to their success.
And even more important in a moment of COVID, right? Because to your point, so much of those subtle nuances of culture markers are done subtly in the workspace, right? But if we're not together, COVID makes it even that much more for us, where we actually have to be very intentional around this and onboard that new employee with really specific, here's what he or she's going to need to know, and here's how we can support them, and get a collaboration team around it. So that's really important.
Also, let's be frank. I mean, the world of COVID, the lines between who you are as a person and who you are as a worker have become really blurred. So, you got the cat jumping on your keyboard, you got your 2-year-old naked running to the shower behind you. You've got, there's can be a lot of disparity in terms of your work environment. You can have like a little closet to work, or you can have a dedicated office, and that makes it very, very difficult for people to feel they can show up in the way they truly are. Accountability is really essential, because here's one thing that happens. If I come as your first of whatever that category might be, I want to know that the rules are fair and that I can trust your word. So whatever commitments you're going to be making, if you tell me I'm going to get my salary reviewed in 6 months, so let's negotiate a lower salary because we're going to get a chance to increase it in 6 months, be clear and truthful. Because if not, I'm not going to trust you. This is true of any employee. Performance criteria, what will get me promoted? If you don't know, just say, I don't know. We don't have processes that are, because what happens when you are the minority, you know that informal processes will leave you behind. If everything is done through a conversation in the past over lunch about a salary increase or a promotion, and you don't have access to that lunch, you won't get promoted. So this is really essential to build trust. Resiliency is an interesting one, because we tend to think of feedback of something that managers give employees. But in reality, a fresh mind coming from the street, a fresh mind of someone who hasn't been working for us before, can help you give great feedback and saying, you know what, the stuff you did during the interview worked beautifully, but the onboarding, we could have used these 3 things. Or the way you handle team dynamics, which we'll get to see, I've noticed that there's a lot of this, but not enough of that. This is the time when you as a manager can learn from that employee, from their background, their experience, and their being so new and fresh to the culture.
It's so true. We often ask the employees to be agile and to be resilient, but we're looking for that when we're hiring, particularly right now in the midst of COVID. Those are some of the core things our clients are saying they need. But often we're not, as managers, asking, how can I be resilient? How can I be agile? How can I get better? Back to that humility point. So it's really important that we do that. Good. That's great.
Yeah. And of course, transparency, this is a really essential one, because how many of your culture norms are unspoken? Nobody writes down, we're sticklers for time and everybody, or we love jokes, or our meetings are always scheduled for 45 minutes. Every time I walk into a new client, I have to learn all these things. People, do you use email? Do you use Slack? Do you use neither? Your culture likes lengthy messages, lengthy emails, or very crisp and cut to the chase emails? Those are the things that any person coming in wants to know. They want to know they have to be on time. They want to know that people will be interacting in this particular way. So it's really important that you share the unspoken rules, whatever they may be. And then finally, make sure that you partner with the employee in the first time that the team is exposed to this new employee, that it is in the way the employee wants it. Because in many cases, companies, in trying to do the right thing, managers can make mistakes. So just have the employee write their own. What do they want people to know about them? Mm-hmm. And they write it. I've seen people sending anywhere from pictures of their pets to pictures of them skiing, and then picture of people being quite vulnerable and talking about their disabilities. and saying,
And
hey,
that,
I have a hearing problem on my right side. Please, when you talk to me, if you're in person, come on the left. They say it. They're called this, but it's what they want everybody to know.
and they may have, you know, in that same token, you might have someone who's more introverted than extroverted on the team. And so as the introduction, they might say, yeah, I can write this or I can give you some pictures, but I'd rather you share it and give the intro and do the speaking. Or someone else may say, I prepared my own presentation. I'd love to introduce myself to the team. Those are two big extremes, but allowing them to be part of that brainstorm on how to introduce themselves to the team allows them to show the personality and as well as integrate themselves into, this is how I like to communicate. This is what makes me feel comfortable.
It's such a simple tactic, but it's so empowering to give them agency, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Let's keep going. The important next step is meetings. That's another moment of truth that was, oops, there we go. There's that, to me, this is another place that's so rife with opportunity, I would say. And how do we apply in a meeting situation, particularly around Zoom and COVID, an inclusive kind of hearty culture? What would you say here?
Well, so meetings is a really, like you were saying, Lisa, and it's so essential. And some of our cracks have been showing up about belonging in the meeting interactions that we have these days, because we have so many. It seems like it's endless right now. But let me just start by saying is that what people are longing for in our conversations with employees, they're longing for the humanness of contact, you know, of physical presence. So while we talk, so before I get started, is just make sure your meetings start always with, how are you? How is everybody doing? Make sure you connect with the individual. Make sure that you have taken the time to understand people's condition when they show up in meetings. Like I said, they may be in a closet, or maybe meetings around noontime because they're working in the kitchen are incredibly hard. Make sure you know that about your employees, that you're supportive. But when we think about, you know, and this is past COVID, when you're thinking about humility, you don't have to be the only one with the right words, all the great ideas, and the agenda. Empower others to set that up, especially those less likely to speak up. Give the quietest person the chance to set up an agenda and kick it off. And with enough preparation and advancement and support, they will come out. But the introverts have become have more challenges right now than people that used to be already extroverted. Empathy, you know, part of it is that you need to start seeing the world from the eyes of somebody else. I might be having challenges with Corey. Maybe Corey says something that really gets to me. And if Lisa comes to me and she goes, Noni, what is your problem? Corey and I get along really well. There might be a little bit of truth, and that is a call for me to rethink about my behavior. But it might also be that Corey relates to me differently. Maybe Corey had a bad experience with someone like me many years ago and has it. So it's part of our humanness. It's part of who we bring to work. We bring it all. So make sure that you can get in my shoes or get in the other person's shoes to see the world.
It's also, as a manager, I also find that it's really important to be the translator, right? Well, this might be what's happening for Lisa, or Corey right now. Let's understand that in the bigger context. Because I think that kind of translating as collectively as a collaboration really can make an impact, and we can create more space for what Corey and I like to call grace, right? Let's give each other grace. Let's give our community grace.
I was just going to say that with empathy, for sure, is the great opportunity to have this true understanding and connectedness to others. Because of COVID, everyone is being affected by COVID on top of the other things, the other trials of life that happen, right? And the day to day and how people show up from one meeting to the next or one day to the next is have that, remember that, hey, there is a good chance that someone's going through something. Maybe their family was touched or something else happened, just like something happened to me last week. And I needed grace. Continue that grace, continue that empathetic journey with the people you're working with.
And when we're talking about disrupting biases, one of the dynamics of biases, not necessarily always, but quite often, what happens in biases, there's three roles: the sender of the bias, the receiver of the bias, and the observer. So in the case I was explaining, let's say Corey said something terrible to me that can be very difficult, and so he's the sender, I'm the receiver. I am in shock. I am like trying to figure out what to do, what to say. My emotions are caught up. I have despair, I have anger, I have disappointment. And Lisa is watching all this. She has the privilege. At that very moment, she has the privilege because she's not engaged. And she can very well either come to me and say, Noni, step aside, don't listen to him. He's not very rational, or she can call Corey and say, Corey, you can't do that. You can't say that, and here are the reasons why. Or she can intervene right there in the moment saying, okay, guys, okay, we need to stop right here. She has the power to do that. So use that power of being the observer, being the neutral party in this dynamic to do something to disrupt it.
That's Allyship 101, right? It's like that core of allyship. And I think we talk about as accountability to allyship. In that moment of an observer, oftentimes I find myself, and I've had many other people tell me, they're not quite sure how to handle it. They're not quite sure what to do. I had a friend of mine, she's a Black woman, and another white woman in the room commented and tried to touch her hair. That's not okay. I know that's not okay. And in that moment, I wasn't sure, should I step up and say something? Should I, talk to my friend, the African-American woman later? How do we know what's the right thing to say when, Noni? What would you recommend around that conversation?
Well, I always think, Lisa, that the first thing to do is to take care of the person who was a receiver, because that's usually where the biggest thing is. So I would say always focus on the receiver and see what they can do. And sometimes they will tell you the answers. In many cases, they'll be the one.
I was just saying, just a note without an invite, reaching out to touch someone's hair is just pretty egregious.
Not okay.
Hey, listen,
I mean, and that's not just hair, that's anything, right?
Yeah.
So, asking for that consent, it goes with anything else is, how would you like to be approached or interacted? I mean, there would have to be some intimate connection, or at least some earlier understanding of, this is how approaching me is comfortable. This is how I would like to stand up. You can, shake my hand, put your hand on my shoulder, or you can touch my hair, but however you set those norms, but just reaching out to do it.
Well, it's fascinating, right? And we're seeing all of this play itself out in COVID. On those social interactions we have with COVID, we're checking in with people before we connect. We're asking people, how do you feel safe? Are you comfortable shaking hands? Should we just rub elbows? Should we just kind of wave? We're verbalizing those requests now. I've seen it again and again, and it's a moment of truth that I think is really beautiful. We have just a few more minutes, and I hate to rush us through. Are there things around resiliency, transparency, inclusivity in a meeting that you really want to make sure our audience doesn't lose sight of, Noni or Corey?
Well, meetings is where ideas get stolen, credit is granted, conflict is resolved, partnerships and like-mindedness is celebrated or not. So this is the reason why meetings matter so much, is because they set the tone. This is where all the differences come in the same room. So I would say that the role of the manager is even more essential, especially as a role model. They need to role model the behaviors that they want, and they need to also making sure that as they're changing the culture of a team that has worked for the last 10 years, and all of a sudden you have someone who's different, that those jokes may not be appropriate. That football conversation for 10 minutes in every meeting may not be as welcome by everyone. So you're going to be shifting dynamics that make things very comfortable. You need to be comfortable by announcing and shifting those, which may not be a popular decision altogether, but it's going to send a message. So these changes in general, everything we've talked about is going to require a certain level of discomfort. And so all I would say is just welcome the discomfort, because it will be your best friend as you transition to a new culture.
That's such a great way to wrap up, Noni, in that if we look at what the core elements of hearty leadership look like, the idea that growth and change does require a measure of discomfort. And we're of course all in the midst of COVID right now, so we're all really uncomfortable. We're in the midst of political unrest. We're all hoping that we have a smooth transition. We're in the midst of racial and social injustice unrest. There's so much disruption. And then of course, health. There's so much disruption. So we're really familiar right now with discomfort, which really goes back to, as Corey said, that this is an amazing moment in time to make change, to be really intentional. Everyone's hoping that 2021 is going to be the big change. And I would say that we have a moment and a real opportunity to get on the other side of this and lead our companies and shift our companies and our experiences in new and powerful ways. We have, this is a teaser of the content that you're going to see in the Hardy Playbook. We are so grateful for the Snowsports Industry Association for helping us bring this work out into the world. If you'd like a copy of the playbook, you do need to be a member of SIA. Feel free to email hello@PrismWork and ask for it, and we can help get you a copy, again, assuming you're a member. And then if you would like a copy of this deck, just to have as a teaser, we're happy to share it with you. Please say hello@prismwork.com, send it to us, or you can send it to me, Lisen, Lisen, at prismwork.com. And we're happy to support you in your journey. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things, and we've talked about it quickly. We're so grateful for your time, and we would love to and continue to have the conversation. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. And we're, no question is a bad question. We're all on this learning journey. I think none of us are really experts. We're all learning together, and this is how change is going to happen. We're wishing you good health and well-being in the months and years to come. Thank you so much for your time.